Peptic ulcers are a common condition, but when one ruptures, the demographic profile sharply narrows. The risk of perforation skews heavily toward men between the ages of 30 and 50, affecting them at a ratio of up to 20-1 compared to women. For most patients, there is a known history of stomach issues, but in about 20% of cases, the patient has absolutely no prior history of ulceration. The first symptom they experience is the emergency itself, a phenomenon known clinically as a silent perforation. The crisis begins at the microscopic level. An ulcer on the anterior wall completely erodes through the full thickness of the stomach tissue. What starts as a localized wound eats through the final cellular barrier, opening directly into the free peritoneal cavity. In an instant, the internal containment fails. A localized digestive complaint becomes an acute biological countdown, initiating a systemic emergency that will unfold over 3 distinct phases. The first phase is called peritonism. The breach allows a highly caustic mixture of acid, bile, and pancreatic juices to spill out of the digestive tract and directly onto the sensitive lining of the abdominal cavity. The body responds to this severe chemical burn with an immediate mechanical lockdown. The patient's breathing shifts entirely to the chest, leaving the abdomen completely still. The abdominal muscles violently retract and lock into a state of board-like rigidity to guard the internal organs from further movement. This diagram illustrates the internal geography of the spill. Escaping acidic fluid flows into the greater sac of the peritoneum, where gravity pulls it along a specific anatomical channel called the right pericolic gutter. From there, it gravitates down and pools in the lower right quadrant of the abdomen, known as the right iliac fossa. Because the corrosive fluid accumulates in this exact location, the resulting pain mimics the exact clinical presentation of acute appendicitis, frequently misdirecting initial medical diagnoses. Meanwhile, digestive gas escapes through the same breach. Being lighter than fluid, this gas rises through the cavity and becomes trapped directly underneath the diaphragm. Physically, this wedge of gas displaces the liver downward, obliterating the normal, solid sound a doctor would hear when percussing the liver during an exam. This widespread chemical burn creates an agonizing and unmistakable physiological alarm. The patient is in excruciating pain, but this intense internal warning system is about to shut itself off. Between 3 and 6 hours after rupture, the body enters stage 2, the stage of reaction. The peritoneum attempts to counter the massive chemical injury by copiously secreting sterile fluid to dilute the leaked stomach acid. This creates a dangerous clinical trap. The rapid dilution of the acid provides the patient with a sudden, significant cessation of pain. Their temperature normalizes. To both the patient and an unwary observer, the emergency appears to be passing. But objective clinical metrics tell a different story. The patient's pulse remains highly elevated, and a stethoscope placed on the abdomen will reveal total silence. The normal, healthy sounds of bowel peristalsis are completely absent. The physical trauma of the breach has reflexively abolished the stomach's normal acid secretion.
While this momentarily stops the chemical burn, it also destroys the body's natural acid barrier. This temporary relief masks a deteriorating internal reality. The initial chemical fire is extinguished, but it leaves behind an unprotected environment that is now perfectly primed for a deadly secondary invasion. The biological countdown doesn't always proceed to the final stage. In subacute or chronic variations of a perforation, the process can sometimes be halted mechanically. This diagram illustrates how specific internal structures act as biological patches. If the perforation is small enough, adjacent organs like the liver, colon, or a fatty membrane called the omentum can adhere to the site and physically plug the microscopic hole. Sealing the leak prevents a cavity-wide contamination. However, the trapped leaked fluid often develops into a walled-off chronic abscess, creating a localized mass that introduces its own set of diagnostic challenges for physicians. While these walled-off abscesses successfully prevent a fatal flood, they demonstrate how precarious the condition is. Survival in these cases relies entirely on the precise anatomical geography of the organs immediately surrounding the breach. For a full rupture, the illusion of relief shatters at the 12-hour mark. The body enters stage 3, diffuse bacterial peritonitis. With the acid barrier destroyed, bacteria freely invade the abdominal cavity, feeding on the sterile fluid and multiplying rapidly. The patient spirals into systemic shock. Clinicians observe a specific presentation known as facies hippocratica. The patient takes on a deeply toxic appearance, characterized by extreme pallor, a pinched face, unusually bright eyes, and cold extremities. Inside, the gastrointestinal tract undergoes a catastrophic mechanical failure. The intestines completely paralyze, massively distending as they fill with trapped digestive gas and immobile fluid. This paralysis carries an ominous auditory signature. When listening to the grossly distended abdomen, a doctor will hear absolute silence, punctuated only rarely by a high-pitched sound known as an obstructive tinkle. The pain-free window of stage 2 has permanently closed. What began as a localized chemical spill has now fully devolved into a diffuse, systemic biological failure. Defeating this cascade requires clinicians to act before the final stage becomes irreversible. They must decisively prove the breach exists while the patient is still sitting comfortably in the deceptive calm of stage 2. This is the primary diagnostic proof, an upright abdominal X-ray. When a patient sits or stands, gravity allows the escaped gas to rise. The resulting image clearly reveals a dark crescent of free air trapped directly beneath the right cupula of the diaphragm, confirming the perforation. If the X-ray is inconclusive, physicians can use a chemical tracing method. A specialized dye called gastrographin is pushed down a nasogastric tube into the stomach. The dye physically leaks out of the rupture, highlighting the exact structural failure point on clinical imaging. Surviving a perforated ulcer requires interpreting physiological deceit. True medical intervention means looking past the patient's subjective sense of relief to expose the hidden, ticking clock mechanics of a body in crisis. When an acute peptic ulcer punches a hole through the stomach or duodenum wall, the sterile abdominal cavity is immediately flooded by caustic gastric fluids. To halt this leakage and prevent systemic infection, the surgical objective is threefold: locate the breach, patch it securely, and thoroughly decontaminate the peritoneal cavity. Before making an incision, the patient must be resuscitated. This involves keeping them strictly fasting, administering necessary sedation, utilizing a nasogastric tube for hourly aspiration to limit further leakage, and starting broad-spectrum antibiotics via a parenteral route. Intravenous fluids are started immediately, typically 0.18% saline in 4.3% dextrose. The volume must replace the daily requirement of approximately 2.5 liters, while also accounting for the volume lost through gastric aspiration. Opening the abdomen of an unstable patient often leads to poor outcomes. Meticulous preoperative resuscitation provides the physiological window necessary for the patient to survive the physical stress of the operation. Access to the abdomen is usually achieved through a midline or perimedian incision. Upon entering the peritoneal cavity, surgeons often encounter an escape of trapped gas and a significant accumulation of free fluid. To expose the surgical field, the right lobe of the liver is retracted upward, while the stomach is drawn toward the patient's left side. This maneuver brings the lesser curvature, the pylorus, and the first part of the duodenum into view. The perforation typically appears as an oval or circular, punched-out hole. The surrounding tissue is often congested and swollen, making the edges of the breach clearly visible against the gut wall. Gastric ulcers typically rupture along the anterior lesser curvature, while duodenal ulcers appear on the anterior or superior aspect of the first part of the duodenum. If not found here, the search shifts to the posterior gastric wall and lesser sac for hidden ruptures. A systematic search identifies the breach quickly, reducing the time the internal organs are exposed to the infectious contents of the stomach. Closing the perforation begins with the placement of 3 interrupted sutures using atraumatic chromic catgut. The first suture is placed upper, the second lower, and the third through the center, held open with forceps. A portion of the greater omentum is made over the hole, beneath the loops. The sutures are then tied, anchoring the patch to seal the defect. Careful tension is required during this step. If the sutures are tied too tightly, they can cut through the swollen, fragile tissue of the gut wall, compromising the repair. The sutures themselves do not provide a watertight seal. They serve to hold the omental patch in place, which then acts as the primary plug to facilitate the actual healing of the ulcer.
Once the patch is secure, attention shifts to the rest of the abdomen. All excess fluid must be thoroughly suctioned out to prevent postoperative complications. This map outlines 4 anatomical pockets where fluid accumulates. Cleanup begins right in the subphrenic space, Rutherford-Morrison's pouch, and the pericolic gutter. Next, the pelvis is cleared. Finally, the left subphrenic area and left pericolic gutter are mopped to ensure a clean field. Throughout this process, swabbing with gauze is kept to a minimum. Excessive trance more than 6 hours after the perforation, or if frank pus is visible, a drain is placed in Rutherford-Morrison's pouch or the right pericolic gutter and brought out through a separate incision. The procedure ends with the closure of the abdominal incision in layers. For obese patients, the superficial layers are often drained separately, as the abdominal wall is more susceptible to infection than the peritoneum itself. Leaving even a small amount of contamination in these abdominal pockets can lead to sepsis. This thorough cleanup is just as critical to the patient's recovery as the surgical patch. The leak is sealed, the contamination is removed, and the incision is closed. Comparing the initial state to the repair shows the structural change. On the left is the active breach leaking gastric acid. On the right, the defect is plugged by vascularized omentum and secured by the 3 suture lines. Chronic ulcers or complications like hemorrhage may eventually require definitive surgery, such as a gastrectomy. However, for acute cases, the simple suture technique achieves an 85% cure rate. By utilizing the patient's own omental tissue to bridge the gap, the simple suture remains the standard surgical intervention for pulling a patient back from the brink of a fatal abdominal crisis.